Good evening. My pronunciation at night getting worse, so sorry about that in advance. So welcome to the Architecture League Prize 2017, I second. My name is Sunggu Yang, one of the committees this year. As you know, this year's theme is support, and I would like to start this introduction with several questions relevant to that theme. Few examples of those questions are: what does support stand for? How is support situated? What are the politics of support? What support your work? What does your work support? Are there certain conditions of support? What is the situation which has least support? How is an architecture with precarious support look like? Which part of your design is defined against support? Is there a design without any support? How do you manage the relationship between the thing being supported and the nature of the support? If support is caught up in the idea of change or compromise, is it always in the form of positive reinforcement? What props up architecture today? You'll be able to find answers through these three I am about to introduce. We are very excited to have them here tonight to further share their great insight to this year theme support. So today's first answer is by Jonathan Louie and Nicole McIntosh of Architecture Office. Jonathan Louie and Nicole McIntosh founded Architecture Office in Syracuse. Their work support architecture's unique capacity to not be static and singular, but to simultaneously engage and refresh the real-time value of the things around it. Jonathan Louie studies MArch at University of California and BArch at Syracuse University. He is assistant professor at Syracuse University School of Architecture. He is one of four founding organizers for On the Road, a platform for changing architectural experimentation outside of the museum and institution. Nicole McIntosh studied at ETH Zurich in Switzerland, where she also taught alongside Mark Angeli. After living in desert while being a teaching fellow at Taliesin School of Architecture, she was a lecturer at University of Arizona. She is currently assistant professor at Syracuse University School of Architecture. Please welcome Jonathan and Nicole.
Thank you. We're really honored to be here tonight amongst such talented young designers and are very thankful to the jurors for receiving this prize. Also, we would like to thank Anne and Matt for helping us, and their team for helping us with the coordination of the event and exhibition. We had a really fantastic time here. And also, we would like to thank our Dean, Michael Speaks, and our colleagues at Syracuse University who supported the development of our work. And lastly, of course, friends and family who are here tonight.
Yeah. So we wanted to start off with our support slide from our portfolio. And we wrote this one thinking about the prompt for this year's Young Architects Award. We could not help but to think about the images around us and how we gather, deploy, and actualize it to support our work. The title of our proposal, There, draws on the support of a pervasive image culture to construct new designs that question the signification of a thing in relation to its intent. Images are a fundamental element in today's world, and through image saturation, we now question the single legible vocabulary of a thing. With this in mind, we consider the term there to be a singular place or position, and the there draws on the accumulation of multiple places or positions.
Here are images from our archive of projects that are currently in the office. Through literal representation and reconfigurations, our work aims to actualize images that both distinguish and deny form, material, surface, and structure of readily available things from its assumed disciplinary and cultural associations. To destabilize the experience of images and things by displacing or interrupting their familiarity, be it context, materiality, or other characteristics. The images influence both the means and ends of our work, supporting the project's conception and also finding their appearance as part of the outcome. Throughout the presentation, we would like to talk a little bit more about some of these images that made it into our work.
Just to give a quick example, this is an image collection of a project we did in 2015. It highlights the transference of an image across mediums. In this case, the reconfiguration of the iconic blue and white colors that are found in Portuguese azulejos throughout many cities and buildings in Portugal. But more recently, they have transferred from tile to knitwear to advertisement to the 2013 Jean-Paul Gaultier line on the bottom right. And our proposal on the right-hand side, a new temporary storefront wallpaper for a small shoe retailer in Abrantes, Portugal. The wallpaper design averages a local azulejos colors into 5 DNA color blocks. It was installed for the 2015 180 Creative Camp Festival. And to build on this, today we'll talk about 4 projects. Each one looks at different aspects of transference and they're there.
The first project we would like to talk about is a research project that we're currently compiling for an upcoming exhibition. The project looks at the tension between codes and cultural themes in American towns as a transportation and translation of cultural associations. We'd like to thank our 2 assistants, Hanneke van Dersen and Jose Gobas, for the help with this project. Strewn across the American landscapes are suburbs, neighborhoods, and enclaves that exude qualities and characteristics that follow European cultural themes. With names such as Frankenmuth, Lindsborg, or New Glarus, we located 14 towns that visually convince their visitors to be not here but there. Jean Baudrillard would argue they do not lay claim to being extraordinary. They are simply extraordinary due to their indulgence towards their own banality. Here at another there, nostalgia for a place has taken over, creating a bizarre type of cultural preservation. It is an entertaining form of image and cultural identity. For example, at a gift shop in Solvang, a Danish town in California, you can buy postcards with images taken in Denmark. Narrating back to popular European destinations through imagery, it is uncertain if one is there. Highly curated through popular imported historic form, they resemble what we all know as being German, Swiss, Dutch, Czech, or Swedish. These tourist towns are the evidence for the influence of media as built manifestations. Here, a collection of typical alpine windows by photographer Andre Vincent Gonçalves in relation to Vail, Colorado, that was built after Swiss alpine towns. They show that in the present period of time, there is a desire to create an identity through the images of cultures in relation to history. Similar to Wes Anderson movies, where constructed analogies of historically signifying architecture reinforce the narrative in the scenery, deploying architectural details that evoke certain associations and feelings for a place and its culture, and at the same time create a new but very familiar identity.
They are the post-production of the theme park, a new tourist destination. Their design driven by consumption. As once Walt Disney for Disney's Showcase imagined, they are shopping areas where stores and whole streets recreate the character and adventure of places around the world. For some people, they might be a popular weekend getaway. For others, they are simply an image of home. We are particularly fascinated by New Glarus, Wisconsin, America's Little Switzerland. Founded by settlers in 1945, it evolved from an agricultural town to a tourist town with Swiss characteristics. It's not quite here or there, but it's between the Swiss and the American landscape. One is neither here nor there, more so at another there. Here in New Glarus, you'll find a selection of historic types that collide with local construction techniques. In this town, characteristics of built form and material are shifted, and tectonic values are lost in translation. Once the Beckers found them in Germany, you find new types of the Regelbau here in New Glarus, Wisconsin.
To control and regulate the urban setting, the building department's design review committee consoled Swiss design examples illustrated in 8 different books that were published over 40 years ago. Like the 2 shown on the left, the books show images of an architecture that has long passed in its country of origin. Here, the there tries to capture the there back in another time, and although long gone there, it seems preserved here at the other there in Wisconsin's Little Switzerland. Additionally, the town currently flourishes under Article 2 titled Swiss Architectural Theme in the Building Codes. It is divided into typical Swiss architectural elements that support the nostalgic image of the physical built Switzerland, which may result, as you can see here, with a Swiss balcony overlaid on top of a typical American housing development.
Are we there? Although the imagery seems to be persistent, there are also desired things found in everyday American life that make their appearance on these elevations, such as the American flag, the air conditioning unit, or the steakhouse sign. Here is an example, the corner of a themed Main Street facade, Sportsman's Bar and Grill. They are surreal and at the same time very real. These elements cause different associations to collide with one another. At the corner of the Hitch and Hyde building, shown here, you see a shingle-clad partie wall that meets the Fachwerk facade. And currently, as we mentioned, we're compiling an exhibition. And at our architecture office, we're collecting a series of these facade drawings and building these corner models that are characterized as Swiss, pointing to codes as part of a continuous Swiss condition and tradition with an American flair.
In the next 2 projects, the There reconfigures imagery of a setting to produce an ensemble with its existing environment, sometimes emulating it and at the same time mixing it with other alien qualities to construct a particular identity. House in House is a house that references multiple things in its surrounding environment. It's situated about an hour south of Seattle, in a forest along a lake. On the side is an existing cedar log kit cabin built in the 1950s. Although the cabin is not historically preserved, we believe that it has a certain cultural value to the Pacific Northwest. The look, material, structure seems to belong here. We had hopes of integrating the existing cabin into our design, but there is not a permanent foundation, and the structure is not really in good condition. Like the existing cabin, we built a new internal cabin with minimal infrastructure and facilities one needs for living, such as a bathroom, kitchen, storage, and bedroom. It has the same footprint as the existing cabin and is surrounded by an open floor plan that became a generous living and dining area. It is a house in a house.
The inner house looks like a sculpture and functions as a house. It is made out of thick concrete and with a permanent footprint. It's meant to be there and contains all of the necessities for a modest living. It is also an homage to the existing cabin that we removed. The outer house looks like a house and acts only as an enclosure. Inspired by the American tract home, such as the ones photographed by Dan Graham, it is made out of a typical wood frame construction with the crawl space below. The outer house shelters the inner house, producing 2 levels of permanence, the concrete inner core and the shingle-clad exterior.
Specific to the site was not only the existing cabins and surrounding homes, but also the trees and color variations of the forest. We were projecting low-fidelity photographs of nature painted onto the hardy shingle exterior to create a relationship with the existing environment. To make the house part of the setting, we produced an ensemble by overlaying the images of its environment with the house. Not to form a stylistic unity, but more so a hybrid of multiple parts, linking the pixel of the images with typical shingles found in the area. From a broader point of view, The ensemble of elements construct unexpected details that create an additional alienation from the expected image. For example, by integrating the gutter into the form of the house, it allows us to reduce the distinction between the roof and wall into one singular shape, producing an unexpected or odd-looking detail that is an additional estrangement of the typical track home.
The second project we'd like to show is one that's still under development at our architecture office. This past spring, we were approached to develop a small cabin in eastern Washington amongst a sage field in Kittitas County. While driving through the area, we were inspired by the barns found throughout the countryside and the indifferent but direct relationship between the internal truss and exterior cladding systems that comprise these structures. In particular, the truss was of interest to us, and we started to think about the kind of value of the truss itself that relies on optimal web span and beam connection versus the kind of analogous and charming appearance that we're most interested in. In particular, the analogous image produces variations on the system, material, and form of these truss structures. And in the project, we are interested in finding opportunities where the webbing meets the vertical structure to be able to create different sectional qualities within a one-story building. This allows for different spatial configurations through the repetition of self-similar elements within the framework. By altering the core geometry at the base of the truss, we're able to create 3 different living zones within the house. From left to right is an entry porch, a middle core with a storage unit above, and on the very right-hand side is a living and dining area that is housed under a pitched roof.
Our goal was not to compose the trusses within the building, but more so to set up an outline for the trusses to repeat themselves within. For example, the C spacing defines the kitchen appliances, the B spacing is a standard spacing, and the C spacing connects the width of the entrance corridor to shape the window and extends to the view beyond. To keep the interior square footage under the required 800 square feet, we subtracted from the mass 2 porches that are integrated into the framework. The exterior porches are a continuation of interior rooms extending views out into the sage field. The trusses are enclosed by a board and batten system that obscure the interior framework. The boards are on horizontal stripes set at intervals of 6, 9, and 12 inches wide. At the porches, we're simply removing the boards to create a semi-enclosed patio. To distinguish between the subtle depth of the board and batten, we're projecting purplish colors sourced from the existing sage field onto customized aluminum battens, dissolving the colors as it moves towards the sky while using the thin vertical strips to mimic the sage growing around it.
So the next project that we'd like to show is one that we did 2 years ago, but continues to live on. It's called Big Will and Friends, and it's a traveling installation and stage for performance. The project is something that builds on some of our research that was done on wallpaper, and as a consumer product that confuses the distinction between two-dimensional illusions with physical depth. We'd also like to thank 2 sets of people. Stephen Zyma, who was a collaborator when we first showed the piece. He displayed a series of collages on the walls of the installation. We won't talk too much about the collages, but we'd like to thank him nonetheless. And as well as our 2 design assistants, Nicholas Carmona and Gabriel Boyajian, who helped us with the construction design of the project. We'd like to first start with a little bit about Clement Greenberg, a Syracuse alumni. He argued for the distinction between architectural and pictorial limits to construct the bias that the discipline of painting distinguishes itself from the physical walls that support it. But to paraphrase from his own terminology on wallpaper, it is a kind of picture that without actually becoming identified with the wall, would spread all over it. In writing this, we believe he is unknowingly forecasting that the spread of wallpaper blurs the distinction between the purely pictorial and the wall as an architectural substrate, pushing on the limits of two disciplines by connecting shape as concurrently a fundamental property of objects in space and a medium for image. With that being said, we love that Cecil Beaton photographed Jackson Pollock's Autumn Rhythm as a wallpaper-like backdrop for his new soft look Vogue fashion shoot that you see here. Our wallpaper project, Big Will, is an installation that appropriates Morris & Company's Thistle wallpaper, designed by John Henry Dearly, and it applies it all over a house-like figure. Big Will is a one-to-one scale representation, a kind of literal drawing applied to articulate a material surface. It collapses the depth of the wall with the illusions of an image to merge the point where material meets representation.
In thinking about the drawing as an articulated surface, we started the project by creating a series of drawings that collapse the planar walls of the figure into a singular picture plane. Here's another drawing. The drawings dissolve the physical depth of the planes to construct a visual play between the legibility and of the fissile pattern and an overwhelming effect. To conceal the physical structure within its visual context, the project is constructed from a framework of white PVC pipes and 3D printed joints, with painted scrim stretched across the frame. Both the visual and physical support are based on a 2-foot spacing that melts the structure with the imagery.
The visual overlap of the surfaces produces a confusing appearance that at times appears as a flat painting, and at times a three-dimensional environment, and at times a house-like figure. Over the past year, Big Will has traveled and met many, many, many new friends, eliminating the boundary between the artwork and its viewer, while perceptually extending or flattening the visual space of the installation. The video that we're watching was done in collaboration with choreographer Stephanie White and videographer Adam Greenberg. It is a temporary happening that alters the perceptions of the piece. While watching the video, one thing to look for is the material properties of the scrim that allow for a range of visual effects, where depending on the lighting location and the time of day, sometimes you perceive the material and sometimes you perceive the image. as you know, the project's been traveling a little bit. We've shown it in Syracuse, New York, and Eindhoven, Netherlands. And we hope to keep collaborating with performers as we continue to travel Big Whale.
We'd like to conclude by talking a little bit about the installation we've designed for the exhibition next door. The title Viewfinders is named after the part of the camera that frames a view of a subject. In the installation, we have an interest in expanding the visitor's field of vision to reveal part of our archive. This includes a selection of photographs, screenshots, and movie clips. We invite you to scroll through the selected images, each one shifting the fields of view to collapse other theirs with the here. Each viewfinder is built as a combine of things that takes on a new identity. A sound-packed traveling tripod, molding plastic downspout fittings, matte black paint, gaffer tape, and custom connections. The project was photographed by Thomas Kim and built with the help of John Bryant of Haywood Fabrication and Syracuse University.
So, as the last slide and statement we'd like to make is, our work aims to actualize images that both distinguish and deny form, material, and surface, as well as structure of readily available things from its assumed disciplinary and cultural associations. Supporting architecture's unique capacity to not be static and singular, but to simultaneously engage and refresh the things around it.
Thank you.
Thank you.